Okay, we'll call to order this meeting of the California Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board, Wednesday, March 20th, 2019. We'll begin with a roll call. The chair is present. Vice Chair Reeves.
Present.
Ralph Lightstone.
Present.
Mike Gang.
Present.
Michael Allen.
Here.
Okay, please have the record show that all members are present. Next, we move to approval of the minutes of our last meeting, the February 19th, 2019 meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. We adopt the meetings of the minutes of the meeting of February 19th. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions. Please show the minutes being adopted unanimously. Chair's report. A couple of things. We're not being live streamed today. Today we're being videotaped and it will be posted to the net after it's videotaped. So if anyone chooses to watch, they will see us starting later this afternoon, I imagine. Again, for the information for anyone who happens to be watching, our meetings are fairly short, although today we do have what may be a longer closed session agenda. But most of the board's work is done between meetings where we adjudicate appellate cases that come to us from our field offices where either the employer or the worker disagrees with the finding of the field office judge. And this month, since our last meeting, board members have adjudicated, resolved 1,315 cases. So quite a heavy caseload, and thank you all for your work on those. A couple other items for the chair's report. We've been talking about, and a couple of you have talked with me about the idea of having an orientation of the board. Now this is distinguished from the training that you've already had and all completed with Jody and several of the AO judges. That training was primarily on substantive law. You've been given binders on some of the processes and policies of the agency, but not really had a whole lot of training on that, nor have you had a chance to come up with your own questions that you might want to have answered by the staff and group at large. So just tuck that in your mind. We're going to do something sometime over the summer, somewhere in California. Details will be finalized and you'll hear more about it, but there will be some meeting of us as a group with senior staff and maybe more than senior staff. It'll probably be a day or two that we'll want to block off, again, sometime in the summer. Lastly, I just came from the workforce agency meeting. We have a new secretary, Julie Sue, who's taking place of David Lanier. Very different meeting styles. David's were, for the most part, the members who attended, chairs or directors of different agencies, reporting on what they had done during the last month. Julie's, and maybe it's because it was the first meeting, was much more assertive in terms of having an agenda and stating what she wanted to see. She asked us to do things. I haven't had a chance yet to communicate with staff, so I literally just got back from it. Things like what major, bold ideas could we come up with as an organization, things that wouldn't require any more money that we could do within our current budget, of course. And she gave us some parameters in terms of what she's talking about, things that fulfill our mission, that are helpful to our clients. So we'll be discussing that, not today, but at future meetings and at this orientation that we have somewhere down the road. She also asked us to come up with outreach ideas in terms of media and how we can better communicate with our constituencies so they know that we are there, that we're available, and how easily accessible we might be. So again, I'll speak with Elena and some of the folks about that, and then as a board we'll talk more about that in the future. And that's my report. I move to my vice chair now, Dan Reeves.
I do not have a report this week.
Thank you, Dan. Mike Gang.
I do not have a report either.
Thank you, Michael. Moving now to Ralph Lightstone.
Yeah, I don't have a report. It's just good to get to have the opportunity to get together.
Well, these are three good new board members. And Michael Allen.
Well, you know, first of all, just I wanted to thank IT because I've noticed, because I've been here such a long time, I have less and less of a reliance on emergencies where I need IT to help me, and that's a good thing. That means a lot of things are operating smoothly. And the other thing, and I know that Chair Block knows this, is that to me, we just have a slice that we look at in terms of the cases we're doing, but just the amount of cases where we no longer have to do remands because the recordings were inaudible, it's really, there's been a pronounced reduction in having to waste time and money and effort to redo cases. And so I realize you can't guard against human error. There's always a few, but the reduction is remarkable. And so I wanted to thank IT for that. Usually in my reports, I always thank staff and tell my board members that we have an agency that truly, all you have to do is reach out and you'll get the help you need. And that's really a wonderful thing to have in an organization. The other thing is that I know that we're going to be putting together a budget and going forward into the new year, and I'd just like to put in a recommendation, and maybe management's already thinking in this direction. I really appreciate the training we had last year, and I know that for all staff, that's something that really I think is valuable, is that when you're an organization that provides you with more educational resources, it's a way of showing that we care and that we do want to achieve excellence in what we're doing. And so, we have a highly educated workforce, and most of us are committed to lifelong learning. So the more that we can offer those opportunities to everyone in the organization, I think would be a terrific thing to do, especially when we're still in a period where the economy is quite good and we're not inundated with a large number of claims. And I have a last item here, but I can't read my own handwriting, so I will refrain and probably save that for the next meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Was it the newsletter?
Well, with the newsletter, I did talk to Lori about that. I want to continue working on it, and probably some of the board members, I'll be coming to you and asking you to help me work on it. So to me, if we could do it as a collaborative thing to put it together, I think having something for within the agency where we're communicating with everybody is a positive thing. And so I mentioned it to Lori today, and we're going to try to get that moving forward. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I can pick up on a couple of things Michael said regarding IT for one. I memorized the help desk number early on in my tenure, but I'm starting to forget it. That's a real good thing. And there was something else Michael said. Oh, about the training and making training available to more people. And when Julie first mentioned, Julie Sue, the secretary, mentioned the bold ideas, my first thought was, maybe it's time, if we have the resources, to go back to doing a statewide training for ALJs, or a north and a south training. So again, all of it is limited by resources, which we're told there aren't necessarily going to be new resources available, but not to constrict our thinking. And if there are resources, or if there is a need, we might get some resources. So I agree with you, Michael. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I could, I finally deciphered what the last item was. I usually do a shout out to all the staff here, whether it's management or appeals judges, but I want to do a special shout out to, I'm almost amazed when I listen to the cases, on these really close cases where we listen to them, what a great job our field judges do and the staff of the field. And I just think that I want them to know that us here appreciate them. And I know what a hard job it is to get it right out in the field, because a lot of times you're dealing with situations where the advocates are lay people. It's not like there's attorneys representing the cases, and they're trying to get a good record. And I think it's amazing how often the field judges are successful in getting that good record that we need to be able to make these decisions that we need to make. And so I know in my tenure here, I've never actually did a shout out to them, but I want the field judges to know that I think they do a magnificent job, and I really appreciate them.
Thank you, Michael. At this point on our agenda, we're at item number 5, which is public comment. Do any members of the public wish to address the board? Any members of the public wish to address the board? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 6, which is a report by our CEO and Chief Judge, Elena Gonzalez.
Good afternoon, Chair Block, board members. I have the opportunity to address some of the things that you just mentioned. I, on behalf of the field judges, appreciate Member Allen's shout out to the field, because sometimes they feel like the forgotten folks, because as the board members know, when you get the appeals, generally they're decisions that were maybe awry, or an ALJ wasn't as comprehensive as he or she might have been. But all of the ones that are the thousands and thousands of decisions where appropriate hearings were held, appropriate decisions were made that aren't appealed, you don't see those. You don't have the opportunity. So you only see this very small portion of them. So you can get a more narrow view of what goes on. And so it's nice that it would be nice if you could see some of the ones that you don't get appealed, but you wouldn't normally see those. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there are many that go through the system very smoothly, very well, with ALJs that perform exceedingly well. Some of them, their names you don't know because you don't see them that often. They do such a good job. They don't have the problem cases. So unfortunately, we focus on, many times, all of us, the problem areas or the problem people or the problem cases. And coming near the end of the year where we measure for federal timeliness standards and also for quality review, our ALJs do a pretty tremendous job. Having started here as an ALJ and been only able to handle it for 2 years, I know how hard a job it is to sit in room day after day with stories, with the problems, dealing with the family members, dealing with cases that you wish you could rule a different way, but the law is this way. It's a tough job for them. They see them. The people are in the room with you. And when they leave and it can't be the way you wish it could be, it's, there's I think an emotional toll that goes in the field that it's hard to actually understand unless you've done it. And and I feel like sometimes I also get into saying, we could fix this, we could fix this, we could fix this, as opposed to saying, hey, great job. And when we come to the end of March, generally is the great job because we've made the standards, comes out in email. And it really is a sincere one from those of us that, have, pushed the work out all year. And the numbers are, we have made the numbers, we have made the quality reviews time after time. We satisfy the federal quality review standards. And one of the things that I know, an opportunity to just let the board members know that with the federal government quality review standards, your list of them, you may have gotten them in your orientation booklets that show the standards, show the requirements, due process, and so on, and you listen to a case, does it satisfy, does it satisfy? And the presiding judges use that same template to do it regularly with their ALJs to make sure that their ALJs are performing as they should. So we are fortunate to have a number of very highly qualified field judges. That being said, for our numbers, at this time, the year-to-date number of cases closed within 30 days, the percentage is 65.3%, which, and I won't guarantee that at the end of March it will be over 60, but I can almost guarantee that the numbers will, you hate to say guarantee, because you never know what will happen. All the offices will go offline or something. So, anyway, and in terms of 45 days, the field is at 89.2% of the 80% standard. The average days old of our pending cases is only 17.8 days. The standard is 30, so we're getting the work in and we're getting it out fairly quickly in the field. So that's going very well, and a lot of it is a result of the fact that we have fewer cases, and so the work is getting processed more quickly. And this is an opportunity to do some of the things that we haven't been able to do when we're exceedingly busy. In terms of training, I think I mentioned last time I was looking at the minutes about the manager training for the managers, the CalHR called Green Yellow Bell training, an organizational change kind of training, like when the organization changes the way it's doing things, how you impart that information to your folks to make them buy into it, to enjoy it, to help support it, and so on. One of the reasons we're having this is in terms of our, the major bold ideas. Well, a major bold idea that we've been working on for quite some time is the paperless process of doing our work that you all do in the appellate paperless, but in the field it's all paper. Somebody shows up, they've got a file, they've got to open it up, there's papers flying everywhere. There's somebody that got sick in another location, somebody has to drive through Oakland to pick up the files to go to Concord, or those paper things, all paper intensive in the field. It gets scanned to you as appellate judges, and so you do all your work paperlessly, but nobody in the field can. So throughout this day, You know, if some are by phone, they have to be literally mailed by GSO places, so there's a lot of process involved in that. So with the help of Lori started this quite some time, the appeals modernization project. Lori and her team started working on, we didn't have appropriate IT support at that time, as has been mentioned, and it's been great to have a CIO that's working with that. And yesterday we had a kickoff meeting with the California Department of Technology. They brought their top people in, their program managers, looked at what we had developed over here to work on a timeline. We also have to work on a budget and so on. So our goal is that we will be doing paperless hearings in the field within the next couple of years, using potentially a project manager from the California Department of Technology, depending on how it all plays out. But anyway, it was a very exciting time because, as I said, you've done it, but the field has never had the opportunity to look at a file that's paperless. Someone comes to a hearing, they brought a sheet of paper this much. The ALJ's sitting there, you've got to get them, you've got to walk out of the room, go make copies yourself generally, come back, then spend time in the hearing looking through them because you haven't had them in advance, the person didn't have a fax machine or what, didn't mail them in time or something. So it is a bold project, it's a major project, and it's an exciting project. So that is something that we're hoping to have come to fruition as a result of a lot of people's background work for the last couple of years and moving forward. So it involves everybody. We were all there, the money people, the appellate people, the project people, the IT people at the meeting, and so I think that it's something that in your tenure here hopefully will come to fruition. And I think it will make your hearings better too, because when the record below is established more cleanly, then the record you have won't be as complicated. I mean, just getting people to not put post-its like I just did on here on an exhibit, that's a part of the change, because we all have a tendency to do that. And then when you try to scan this kind of thing, it's very time intensive. So that's exciting for us, and I thank everybody that's worked on that, particularly Lori and Jeff has come to the game now, and so it's been a really wonderful project. But the no money part, I'm not sure about that part, about being able to do it with no money or no resources. But we're working on it. I've talked to Rob this morning, and I think that we are at the point we might be able to make something happen without trying to get too much money. Anyhow, okay, and then I have one more thing. The security incidents, there were none this month, so that's a good thing. And finally, the training that we talked about, educational opportunities. Sometimes the planning and the cost of those things can be problematic, and we have been encouraging people to use webinars, their websites. I just had Rob sign the new board members up for the National Association of Unemployment Insurance Professionals. It's called CUIAB. They have a website that's amazing. As soon as they're signed up, you'll get a password. You can sign on there, you can read all kinds of literature from other states, how they handle UI hearings, how they handle disability hearings, how they're, some of them don't have a higher authority, they just have one level. Some of them have like their EDD and their CUIAB like combined in one kind of a group, and so people used to work at one part and now they're hearing officers, but they're not necessarily lawyers. So you can read throughout the United States what each state does. It's interesting. They also have webinars on the credibility determinations, how to conduct a proper hearing, things that you might want to watch or see yourself just to get an idea of how people are trained. So we've encouraged, I've told the presiding judges to please request that the ALJs take the, do the webinars and so on, so at least there's continuous training and it's free once through that organization. So hopefully that'll cover some of the gaps before we can have a larger type of in-person training. So that is the end of my report. Does anybody have questions?
Thank you, Elena. Questions or comments?
No comment. We have, like I mentioned before, we have a really highly educated workforce. And I know that we have actually internal resources, people who are already on staff here who can do training on certain things and where their area of expertise is. So sometimes it's necessary to go outside the agency, but we also have a lot of internal resources. I appreciated the the training I received from people who were internal to this agency.
Good, thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Dan?
I have a question, Elena, and this might have been answered in the past, but looking at these numbers and the length of time the process appeals, everyone's in kind of a close range. And I noticed that both Fresno and in one case Pasadena kind of jump out in terms of the length of time it takes to run a parental family leave case, or in the case of Fresno, a disability insurance claim. Overall, they're well within the average, in fact, at the low end. So I'm curious as to, because I noticed this from last month as well, is there something going on in Fresno why it takes 100 days to do a PFL case, and Pasadena 155 days, where it took Sacramento 54 days? And again, on the GI cases, Fresno was fairly large, fairly higher above most of their field offices. Is there some challenge there that they're having?
There aren't particular.
And by the way, is it a small sample of cases?
Yes. The statewide number, that's what I was just looking at, this report showed this, the number of PFL cases that we have statewide is very, very small. So a couple of cases that took too long could skew the averages. Lori, do you know what the latest numbers with the PFL cases? No. We just, surprisingly, we get very few PFL cases. And so I will look into why it is. You're right, the number does jump out at you that 155 days to process an appeal and 100 are out of the ordinary. And frankly, they aren't having ALJ challenges. They aren't having challenges that I might be able to immediately point out that would cause that. So thank you for pointing that out. And I will actually talk to the presiding judges there and see if there is something with the process that's making this a problem.
I appreciate that. And is it safe to assume that the larger field offices generally take longer overall just because of they have a higher concentration of a larger population to serve? Because I just want to understand why some offices take longer than others.
A lot of it does have to do with staffing. The days to process an appeal many times is the time is more, not on the ALJ side, but it's on calendaring it, and making sure that it's been verified and properly put in the process. Another problem sometimes is if a case has to move because there are too many cases in one office, and they get transferred to another office, time is lost in that we have to literally mail the file, package them in a box, and mail it to another office. So time can be lost there. So if a particular office has fewer ALJs and work has to be moved, or they got moved from another office, say Fresno, is sent work, then they might get it already older before. And the offices are supposed to be in the same range they process them. Sometimes the larger offices actually are more organized and they get it processed quickly moving along, and the offices that have less work may have a tendency to go, just like going to a restaurant, when it's really busy, you get really good service, and when you're the only one there, everyone's disappeared, that kind of thing. I mean, it's conceptually, sometimes when it's, the larger offices know they have to process it, and they're just much cleaner about their process. But this is all part of the paperless project too. We have been, Lori and her team has been surveying the processes in each office to make sure that they're consistent. How do they come in? Where do they go? Literally, physically the file. Where's it put next? Why are some people doing the same step 3 times and not moving on? So we, throughout this process, have been trying to determine ways to make the offices consistent in the way they handle cases, so you shouldn't have that kind of disparity between them that you can't explain.
Okay, thank you.
So Elena, you'll get back to...
Yes, I'll check on those in particular. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? I've got one. Elena mentioned CUIAB and the website, how valuable. It's a very valuable conference. It's the only national conference that's held once a year of people who do what we do. And there's tremendous variation across the country from office to office in how they do it and what they do and how many cases they handle. and I think it'd be valuable for all of the board members to attend. Practice has been to just have the executive director and the board chair attend. This year it's going to be in Indianapolis. And I think now we're creating our budget requests for next year. I wonder, just a show of interest, how many of you would be interested if we can get funding to support all of the board or more of the board going?
Yeah, I'd be interested.
Okay, well, no promises. The previous governor really didn't want to send people to out-of-state conferences. And there was one conference, I guess, here in California before I was on board, and the whole board went, or most of the board went, and many of the judges. But when it's out of state, Governor Brown didn't want people to travel very often. I'm not sure what Governor Newsom's position will be on that, so we can ask. So thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to item 7, report by Jody Remke, our presiding administrative law judge for appellate.
Good afternoon. So with the full board, as you can see, we continue to meet and in fact exceed the Department of Labor guidelines. We're at 90% for the 45-day target and 98% of the 75-day target, which is obviously very impressive for the board. I would just point out on the average days to close cases, you'll see the cycle time on all programs is 32. But when you look at the two discrete numbers for UI and DI, you have the 29 and 59. And the 59 is a little bit higher than usual. Number one, DI cases aren't subject to the same Department of Labor guideline concern, but also with the onboarding of the new members, we had a little bit of a slowdown with the DI until everyone got up to speed. So I'm not concerned though, because when you look at the pending cases, the average age of those, we're all the way down to 16 days. So we'll have no problem in continuing to meet our goals. Any questions?
Questions or comments for Jody? Seeing none, thank you, Jody. We move. Seeing one. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Moving on now to item 8 on our agenda, report by Jeff Wilbury, our Chief Information Officer. Jeff.
Thanks, Chair Block. Good afternoon. Thank you for the shout-outs. On behalf of the IT staff, we thank you for the recognition. We do work hard to make sure that the enterprise can continue to move forward. Our new ISO is working hard on policy review and preparing for our Department of Technology audit. The on-site audit team will be here in the latter part of next month. They will have 2 to 3 people here for about 3 weeks. We will notify everybody in the building, of course, when they arrive, and keep you apprised of progress in that goal. We are, in terms of doing things in major bold moves, these PC deployments and Windows 10 upgrades that have been in the queue for a while are going to start their big push starting the week of April 1st. Pasadena will be our first office, and the logistics to get all of the staffing and equipment down to Southern California and every one of our field offices is well underway, along with communication to staff. So we're really looking forward to getting that project completed over the late spring and early summer. And then I'm happy to report that our IT supervisory ranks will finally be filled. We have recruited and have had an acceptance from Albert Hernandez, who will be watching next month as he starts on April 2nd. He comes from the Department of Toxics.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Questions or comments? See, now, I spoke to George when I was at the agency meeting. George is the IT person for the agency, and he had mentioned that one of the divisions, I think it was ETP, working with the vendor that we've been talking to from kind of start to almost finished, it's been a 9-month process, where their previous process was about 7 years. So you may want to, if you haven't already talked to them about that, you may want to.
I have.
Okay.
And that's why we're looking really closely at using a model like that to accomplish what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I was astounded. It was amazing. So
It's encouraging.
we'll see if it's real. Yeah, it was great. Okay, thank you, Jeff. Moving on now to a report from Rob Silva, our Chief Administrative Services Officer.
Good afternoon, Chair Block and board members. I'll start
by reporting on overtime, which is the left-hand side of your folder. This report is through January of 2019. The overtime use continued to wane in the month of January. Only 21 hours were used in January by our IT department. This represents an 80% decrease from the previous monthly average. This has resulted in a current projection of a $49,000 surplus, which is $7,000 more than what I reported last month. At the bottom of the page, under lump sum payouts, we only had one lump sum payout in January of $48,000. The projection for lump sum expenditures against the $303,000 allocation is now ironically showing a budget shortfall of $49,000. So when you take these two personnel temp help categories, it's a push. They even each other out for now. I reported last month that we've been really having difficulty getting expenditure reports due to the Employment Development Department's integration into the state's FisCal system. Just yesterday, we received expenditure reports through December 31st, but only for personnel. We still have yet to get operating expenditures beyond September of 2018. We have a meeting this coming Monday with Fiscal Programs Division of EDD to get updates on the fiscal crossover and discuss when we can begin getting more consistent expenditure reporting. Due to some of the hurdles that EDD is facing with the FisCal system, they've moved up their procurement deadlines for the current state fiscal year so that the accounting staff have more lead time to cleanly close out through the FisCal system, the fiscal expenditures. I distributed these deadlines in early March to our internal stakeholders. The deadline for submitting contract requests for services is March 29th, that's next week, which is extremely early. The deadline for submitting purchase order requests for goods is May 10th. And there are a handful of CalCard holders here at CUIAB that are responsible for purchasing supplies for our offices. And as of May 20th, we will be condensed down to just 2 CalCard holders for the remainder of the fiscal year. We've assigned Terry Loganauer, who is in appellate operations, as one of those CalCard holders. And then Victor Saldana, who's on my staff, will take care of shepherding through any supply ordering for the remaining offices at CUIAB for the last month of the fiscal year. As of June 20th, CalCards are turned off essentially. We can't purchase anything until there's a new state budget and all of the accounting gets closed through the FisCal system, and then there will be a date to be determined as to when our CalCard holders will again be able to purchase items for us. And also I have a facility update. In 2017-18, the board approved carpet repainting for our Los Angeles Office of Appeals. Because that's in a state building, we have to interface with DGS, which there are some inherent delays when you do that. It's the Ronald Reagan building. And we're finally kicking off the project. We had secured the funds in an architecture revolving fund last fiscal year. We have, in 2 weeks' time, we start a planning process with DGS, and I think we'll have the project completed by the end of this fiscal year. Also, NAUAP was mentioned for members Ng, Reeves, and Lightstone. As of tomorrow, using your CUIAB email, you'll be able to log into the NAUAP website. I should have done that a month ago, but I neglected to. So tomorrow you'll have access and you'll be able to read all about the National Association of Unemployment Insurance Appellate Professionals. And also something the chair mentioned, we have already submitted our out-of-state travel request for next fiscal year to include all 5 board members to attend the NAUAP conference. And that'll roll up into labor agency's request, and we'll see what the governor says. We'll probably know within a couple of months.
Great.
And that's my report.
Any questions or comments for Ralph?
Me.
Rob, I'm sorry.
So Rob, every year you hear me say the same thing, but it's because I've gone through the hard times with this agency when we had to do reductions in force and had difficulties because of the economy improving. So my request, and the implication is not that you're not doing this, but that I always make it a strong point that it's been my experience in all agencies, organizations, that the more transparent you can make the budgetary process in terms of how the process is carried out, how requests for allocations are made, the more that people within an organization are clear about how the budget is built, I've always found that it is nothing but a positive for the organization. And so I know you've done a good job in the past of doing that. I anticipate you'll do it as well, but I just put it out there because I've worked with so many organizations where they were opaque in their way they put together their budgets, and they paid a price for it later on. So the more transparent we are, I think it's all to the good.
Okay,
Thank you.
understood. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Any other comments or questions for Rob? Seeing none, that completes the items on our open session agenda. Before we move into closed session, we do have closed session today. Any other items for open session that I'm missing? Good. In that case, at this point, we'll recess our open session, move into closed session with Mark Musam, our General Counsel. We are now back in open session. Just for the members' knowledge, if there had been any votes taken in closed session, which sometimes there are, we would be reporting out the votes in open session. In this particular closed session, there were no votes, so there's nothing to report out, and now we will adjourn the meeting.